prep is created with and planned with the students in mind. This is all about helping you, gain knowledge on the interview process and make some good networking contacts today. We don't do any sort of regular fraternal stuff. You have lead schools for that. You have grand chapters for that, things like that. There's going to be no, this is how you recruit members to your chapter, or this is how you run an effective chapter meeting. None of that stuff. This is all for your professional development.
Well, not on cover letter, but back to the original question.
Yeah.
I can't talk about the last person I hired, but the last person that hired me, it was because of my activity in Delta Sigma Pi, not just because it was on my resume, but because of the work that I did with the fraternity.
The other thing is don't stop sending follow-ups just when you get hired. So like if your boss takes you out to an expensive dinner to discuss what's important, send a follow-up thanking them for their time.
Wendy, did you have something?
I was interviewing 2 candidates for a position, and one was very humble, willing to learn, did not have the experience needed for the job. The other was fully experienced, and I didn't like talking to her. And while I was out on a business trip in Europe, I came back and found out that the CFO made the decision for me and hired the one that I didn't want, and it wound up being the really wrong answer. From that interview, we could see that is just a preview. If you don't like them in the interview, you're not going to like them beyond that. But that humbleness and willingness to learn, even if they don't have the job experience, I'll take that person.
Next question. Yes.
So following up with what you said, we can't always get through the computer system. If we have an inner track or whatever you may call it, do we call on that, or do we just hope for the best? Or if we don't have that, how do we go about getting that?
I have an
would say
example.
if you find a way through to get to them, be it LinkedIn, whatever method you have to use, it would show resourcefulness.
Mary?
I actually have scored an interview for this week because I did exactly that. I went through the application system online. It just goes into the system, and you don't know whether you're being reviewed and when you're being reviewed. So I started doing some more research. I found the HR director, and I found the vice president that I believed would be the hiring manager, and I sent him an email, and I just said I was compelled to introduce myself. He responded back to me on Friday and said, we'd like to set up something for next week. So it did work.
About 80% of all the jobs out there, you're going to get through either your own personal network or through recruiters. So when I say recruiters, that's really a year or two after you graduate, maybe some in the beginning after an internship. But every single one of jobs that I've ever gotten, either from my family or from Delta Sig to a friend in the neighborhood, whoever it was. So you can try all you want via online. It's really an effort in kind of a waste of time. Personal opinion. So I would be calling in what I call it friends of family. You guys heard the AT&T or so commercial? Friends of family.
That was 20 years ago.
Okay, so whatever, but friends of family. So the real question is, who do you know? Not do you know someone at this company, but I would ask your parents or an uncle, or find 5 companies or so that you're targeting, and then do research on who do you know that works there. So you can.
With these things today, you have no excuse. Every time you get a business card, every time you make a contact. You might not even use it for 5 years from now, but build your contact database. Don't leave it on your computer at work, because God forbid you get walked out one day, which has happened to a few people in this room. But build your network, maintain your network. Anyway.
How many of you have LinkedIn profiles? Raise your hand. Good. That's one of the most powerful tools you can use to help network professionally. How many of you on your LinkedIn profile have a professional picture of yourself on there? I'm not talking about the snapshot where you've cut off somebody else. I'm talking about a professional shot. I highly recommend that. I see so many times where the picture might be a great picture of you, but it's probably better suited on Facebook or something else. you want to put your most professional shot there. And if you have to have it taken by an actual photographer, do it. Because that's the first thing. I can't speak for everybody in this room, but I know that most interviewers, before you come in to interview for the first time, will look you up. And that's going to be the first thing that they look for.
And clean up Facebook, seriously, if you haven't already. We have a recruiter, and we call her like a stalker. I mean, she will go out there and all she does is look and see everything that you've ever posted on Facebook. I kid you not.
I got an email yesterday, a guy I went to high school with is trying to buy a house in Creve Court, and the person he's buying it from stalked him on Facebook, found out they were related to me, and her dad used to work for my company. You know, it's just, there are people out there that they will stalk you. If you're Jane Smith, it's not so big a deal. But if you're, you know, Conrad Wojciechowicz, they will find you.
Pretty easy find.
Or life skills. All right? I'd like to see a show of hands, everybody who's working for the company they started with right out of school. Boom. All right?
Cross-reference.
That doesn't count. That does not count.
The chances you're working for whoever you go to work for right out of school 5 or 10 years later is getting smaller and smaller. So what we're talking about today are skills you're going to need to keep the resume up every 6-9 months. Keeping the contacts up to date, that's a daily process. Because you never know where you're going to become 5-10 years down the road.
Yeah, actually, every year I try to make that point about your resume too. You know, when you've just applied for a job and when you've started it, you have that description that they posted against which you applied. You can use that as kind of a filler on your resume until you get used to exactly what the job responsibilities are. You can at least kind of have something in there as a placeholder. I personally went to work for a crook 20 years ago, and he was arrested by the feds. He's in jail. Well, he's probably out of jail by now, but he was in jail a while. And I literally was without a job, didn't get my final paycheck. I was on the streets looking for work, with nothing. And I had been at the ad agency of that company for a while, and then he was a client. I went there, so I didn't really update my resume because he knew me already. He was a client. So now I suddenly didn't really have a current resume. Didn't have a job. You just don't know what might happen. So I've learned since then, just always at least update your resume with the new job you've received, and then tweak it as you go, as you realize your specific responsibilities. So you just kind of, when you have the stress of job hunting, you don't really want the stress of thinking of the right words to write on your resume.
Wendy?
It's also your top job earning years. So if you start to look at going out of college up until maybe 32, 35, if you change jobs, you're going to start to make more money as you move. It depends what industry you're in, of course, but if you just stick with one job, you may not increase your wealth. So you have to think strategically about it. It's hard. I don't know if everybody else feels the same way, but I was working in an industry, I was working in advertising, and we were lucky to have people stay with us for 9 months before they would go on to another job because we were in the social media advertising industry, so they were just getting picked up everywhere. And every time they would move, they would get a Title I hire, and they would get another $10,000, another $10,000. So if you think this first job is not your ideal job, it's okay. You might change in 9 months, you might change in a year and a half. It's not that big of a deal.